Well, welcome everyone to Magnet Culture's Workforce webinar. And today we are talking about how ChatGPT can save you time and reduce employee turnover. I'm Maggie Augustine, like Cara said, with Magnet Culture, and I'll be joining Cara today at the beginning just to kind of kick things off. So Magnet Culture is a workforce retention company. We specialize in reducing your unnecessary employee turnover. So that's why this is super important today to talk about how ChatGPT can do that. We have management training programs that really fits all budgets. So if you're curious about that, feel free to message solutions@magnetculture.com. But honestly, just go to our website, magnetculture.com, and you'll see all of our programs there. Virtual, in person, we focus on making those managers more effective in their roles because we know that those are the people that keep people longer. It's the age-old saying of people quit bosses, they don't quit jobs. So we like to focus on management training. So enough about that. Like I said, go to magnetculture.com and I'll put that in the chat here so you can just link to that. But for today's webinar, while you've most likely heard about ChatGPT because it's all over the news, all over social media, but maybe you haven't explored how amazing but also intimidating it can be, and also other generative AI tools as well that are just now available to the public. They're just accessible now. So today we want to help you find and use how ChatGPT can just explore this new tool and how it can help you save time and reduce your employee turnover. So Cara's going to spend the next few minutes just sharing her thoughts on this topic and what she's kind of uncovered. So, but also be sure to stay for the entire session because Cara is going to give you a little sneak peek into some free resources that we have for you. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And remember that all of our open webinars are recorded and available at youtube.com/magnetculture. I'll also put that in the chat. So check out this year's past webinars, and that's where you'll find today's webinar playback as well. You'll get an email if you're on here, but you can also find it on YouTube. So, Cara, let's dive in.
Awesome. All right. So I love that she said, this exciting tool that is a bit intimidating for a lot of us. So disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. I am a workforce retention expert. I am not a technology expert. I am absolutely not a legal expert. I am not even a ethical expert, which we're going to talk about some of those concerns. And so all I want to do today is just share with you what I have learned so far. And I'd like to timestamp this webinar. It is May 17th, 2023, because this technology is moving so quickly, along with possible legislation or even lawsuits around it, that I just want to let people know this is May of 2023, and this is what we know as of today. All right. So when I think of the use and the capabilities of ChatGPT in general, I think back to how have we historically gathered information when we were trying to write a summary of things or just collect data or draft our own copy of some content. And so if you think about many years ago, you had to ask somebody who knew or go to the library. And then came Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Which brought it into our homes. And so hopefully you had that one great source that you could go to in your basement or your closet and go get the answers from Encyclopedia Britannica. Well, then came Google and search engines and the internet, right? Actually, not in that order, but the internet came in, and now we even use the word Google instead of search. Just Google it or YouTube it. And that's what we mean when we're going to go search for information. And that gave us multiple answers, multiple sources of information. Well, I think of ChatGPT as just the next step of that. And so instead of getting a list when you Google and you're getting, let's say, 5 different blogs or articles about the topic of interest, instead, ChatGPT is going to take those 5 or way more articles and resources, and it's going to skim it for you and actually give back a human-like answer to your question or your prompt that you are putting in there. Okay. So just to let you all know how quickly this has come about. They say, according to UBS, they said that ChatGPT is the fastest growing consumer application in history. They hit 100 million users. When it went live, they hit 100 million users in 2 months, y'all. And just for comparison, it took 2.5 years for Instagram to hit 100 million users. So that's why you've seen over just the last 6 months, you've seen it dominating headlines. You've seen it dominating conferences. We're being asked, right? Us speakers, we're being asked, can you talk about ChatGPT in your space, right? Which is why I'm talking to you all today, not as a technologist, but as a workforce retention expert. I'm going to tell you what we're using it for and what we're telling our clients to use it for to save that time. Because anybody around here busy a little bit? Yeah. Anybody around here understaffed on their HR teams and other teams in general? Yeah, a little bit. So anything we can do to use these tools to be faster, I say I'm all for it. I'll share with you some concerns as well. But I just think of this as along that historical timeline of how we gather info. This is the next progression in that process. Okay. So what is it exactly? Let me share this with you. So there's a ton of official definitions going around, but Anthony at Professional Robots says ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence or AI chatbot built from large language models. That's one of the technical terms, the LLMs. These models are a type of AI system that's been trained on large amounts of text data. That's what they're looking at, is text information, text data that they have found and been able to skim. They can understand natural language and produce human-like responses to inputs. So when it says the inputs, that just means we have to give the right question or the right prompt, and then it's going to go scour all the information that it has in order to give you a human-like answer. So that's one of the key pieces here. All right. So let me go on to explaining kind of a little bit more about what this is. It does learn your preferences over time. So it's called generative AI. And this artificial intelligence, again, remember, some of you could teach a much more complex class than I'm teaching right now. This is the 101 beginner basics that we have figured out and that I understand so far. So it does learn you over time, and it will learn your style. It learns what you like and don't like as your answers. In fact, anytime you put in a prompt and you get an answer from ChatGPT, it has a thumbs down and a thumbs up type of marker on the side, so you can tell it whether you liked that answer or not, and even submit comments about it, because they're continuing to improve this tool. They want to improve the accuracy, they want to improve the use and the responses that are coming out of it. Okay. So another thing to think about, because it learns you might want to have 2 different accounts. You might want to have a personal account using a personal email, and then create a professional account using your professional email. And I'll give you an example of that is, for me, maybe I want it to look up itineraries of travel. I want to drive to the Grand Canyon from Indiana, and I would like to see as many national parks along the way as I can. I can ask it for that type of an itinerary for me and my family, but I don't want it to start confusing those questions and that information that I like for personal use over into my questions about business and retention and HR. All right. So just keep that in mind, because I have some friends who are using it for their volunteer efforts or side jobs. And then they're also using it for our company. And we want it to stay in its lane as far as what we're trying to look up and look for. Okay. So you may want to separate that. There's not only ChatGPT, there's several tools like this. You might also be familiar with Google's version, which is called Bard, B-A-R-D. And it quickly made headlines when it was not as accurate as ChatGPT when it was launched. And some people got pretty upset about that. So I'll give some examples in a moment of some of the missteps we've seen so far. But I will tell you that this is a very basic tool. I'm going to show you how to get in there. I'm going to show you how it works and how simple it is. And I am confident that even if you're not a tech person, just getting into this tool and starting to use it and understand it is going to increase your confidence in potentially implementing future AI-based tools, all right? Because in fact, AI tools have been around for years, if not decades, and I was a bit intimidated by it. I've got friends who have AI-based coaching programs and apps. I've got friends who have an AI system that watches speakers' videos and tells them how to be better speakers. I mean, there have been all these apps and tools used with AI frameworks underneath them for a long time. The difference is, y'all, the game changer was when ChatGPT became available to the public, the entire public, for free. And it's a simple tool that just has a one command bar. Anybody can use it. Okay. So that's been the game changer, is that accessibility, and there's no barrier to use it if you have internet. All right. That's all you have to have. It doesn't even cost anything for the basic version to be able to use that. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So how do I access it, Cara? If you've never been on ChatGPT, here's the thing. Most of you right now are probably on your computers. It is a computer or laptop-based system. I've been looking up and trying to follow the news on whether they have apps or not. And there are a lot of apps out there that call themselves ChatGPT or an AI bot. But to my knowledge, again, as of May 2023, there is not a fully accessible to the public app on either iPhones or Androids. So don't try to do this on your phone. Just go on your computer. And what you're going to use is you're going to just go to the internet and type in chat.openai for artificial intelligence.com. So chat.openai.com. And you're going to do that on your computer or your laptop. And I know what y'all are doing right now. You're going to do it right now, which means you're not going to listen to me for the next few minutes. And that's okay. There's going to be a recording of this, so you'll come back to it later. But all you have to do is sign up for the free account. You do have to do a login and password and create that. And it looks very similar to how you would see the homepage of Google once you get in there. So let me share with you, I'm going to screen share for just a second here and show you what it should look like once you log in. So if everybody can see this screen here, this is as simple as it is. In fact, when you log in, you won't even have anything down the left side because this is my history. So instead, all you see is this command bar down here at the bottom where you can start typing in your question or your prompt. And then for me, I actually pay for the upgraded version, which is the 4.0. The free version is 3.5. And so I can flip back and forth from the 4.0 to the 3.5. Now, the 4.0, it does cost about $20 a month right now, but I get faster access to my answers. It's going to generate things much more quickly. It also can handle much longer and more comprehensive or complex prompts. So the more detailed that I want to get something summarized, or can you answer this question, or can you draft me this, whatever it is, article, response, email, I can get a much more detailed answer by using the GPT-4. Now that will continue to evolve, and I'm sure 4 will be free at some point, and they'll move me to 4.5 or 5. And so if you decide to really start using this, you may want to use the paid version, which gets you faster and better access to the data and the prompts, okay? Or not the prompts, but the responses on that. They also say that 4.0 is a bit more accurate. It can understand context of what you're looking for a little bit better, and it can even distinguish nuances, especially if you're putting in the feedback of what you like and don't like about your responses. So they're saying that every version of this is much better than the previous version, not just a little bit, but 5 to 10 times better, faster, more accurate, those types of descriptors that they're using for it. Okay. So remember, it's chat.openai.com. And that's how you're going to get in for a login option to get on the site, right? Okay, so now let's go to some concerns and disclaimers. Before, I promise I'm going to share with you how we're using it and how you can use it. But again, I am a workforce retention expert, not an attorney. I am not a technical person. I like to stay up with technology, but I am not the best gadget guru around, okay? And of course, there are some ethical concerns around this. And again, that's not my area of expertise, but I'm going to share some thoughts with you and also some of the missteps that they have seen happen. So first things first, you have to understand that ChatGPT is historically pulling information. In fact, as of today, it's only pulling information from the internet and other sources it has access to. It's only pulling information up through, get this, September of 2021. So if you try to ask it new information, it may or may not have that, and it is likely to be wrong. And in fact, it's funny, Crystal Washington is a speaker friend of mine that is a technologist, and she was teaching me about this, and I heard her speak at a conference as well. And she said that it's like having your best friend who doesn't know the answer to everything, but thinks they do. So they just fill in the missing pieces and act like they know the answer. And so ChatGPT will sometimes do that. In fact, they have deemed that activity from the system as what's called I can never say this word right. Hallucinations, right? Not hallucinogen. Hallucinations. I have to think about that. Okay. So it is literally hallucinating and like putting in the pieces of, oh, I bet, okay, maybe this makes sense. Let's just plop that in there and that'll fill the gap. Sometimes it will tell you it doesn't know the answer, or it can't give you the answer. If you try to go outside the ethical boundaries, they have put some limitations on that. And so just know that whatever you put in there, it's not necessarily 100% true. But here's the thing. For those of you saying, well, if it's not 100% accurate, then I'm not using it. Well, guess what? Neither is Google or a lot of the things that are on the internet. So we should always be looking for, the validation and vetting what it is that we find to make sure we're not just treating it as gospel without checking. Okay. So for example, one of my friends who is a speaker author, he asked ChatGPT to create a speaker intro for him. And when he did that, it was completely accurate, except it said that he was a Navy SEAL. And so later he figured out why it did that, because he remembered, oh, I wrote one of my books with my buddy who was a Navy SEAL. And so somewhere in the bio of that book and its authors, it had connected that Bill was in fact a Navy SEAL, which he wasn't. And so you can see where it kind of took that leap and put that into his bio. So got to be careful with that. And also there are some lawsuits that are starting to happen from misinformation coming out of ChatGPT. So it's more so the legal side of things, which you probably won't be using it for that, and even news stories and current events and things like that. But for example, there was a whistleblower who told authorities about a crime happening. And when people asked about that person on ChatGPT, it said that he committed the crime. And it didn't mention that he was the whistleblower. And so, again, just giving you some examples of where it can misstep and it can fill in the gaps and do those hallucinations and just fill in missing pieces. So double check all of those things. All right. Also, some people have asked, well, where is it sourcing this? And can it give me the sources? So you can ask, where did you get this information, ChatGPT, or do you have sources for this? But unfortunately, a lot of the times when I've asked it for sources, the links are out of date, the sources don't exist anymore or are out of date and things like that. So I think of this more as just consolidating a lot of general information and gathering from lots of different sources all at one time. But it isn't necessarily going to be as detailed as where you should source. So I got that idea from here and I got this idea from here. It's really just like you went around the internet and did the work looking for different ideas and things. All right. So I get that that's a gray area. Some people are not comfortable with that. But just keep that in mind, that they are also continuing to work on it. And I know that ChatGPT has put out statement after statement after statement saying they are working on any of the misinformation, any of the inaccuracies, and even potential bias. Some folks are worried about, is it going to be bias because it's historical information, which we know oftentimes has a lot of bias in it as we learn more and do better over time. For example, with that one, I put in, just to test it, I said, tell me a story about a pilot and a flight attendant, because I wanted to see if it assumed the pilot was male and the flight attendant was female, which would be historical bias. Okay. So I put it in, and what was interesting, at first, it just said they. It kept referring to they, the pilot and the flight attendant. And then when I asked it, tell me more about the pilot, it did give me a pilot named Derek. And then I said, I'd like to meet a different pilot. And when I asked it to change people, I didn't say change genders. I just said, can you give me a different pilot in this story? It changed it to pilot Sarah. Then when I asked for more information about the flight attendant, it actually started with a male flight attendant. So I definitely think it's working on identifying and reducing any of those biases that we see. But just know that that could still be there as well. And us humans are going to have to search for that and take out any bias that we can find. Okay. So one security risk out there is if you put into the system, because you can put your own information in and say, rewrite this or polish this or add to it, you can put your own information in there. Be careful not to put any company secrets, trade secrets, any intellectual property that you don't want other people to have access to, because we're not exactly sure how much of the information we put in the system is then accessible to other people using ChatGPT. Okay, so be careful with that. I think I'm seeing a lot more of that concern with coding in the IT world, of not putting specialized intellectual property protected code into the system, because a lot of IT folks are using ChatGPT for sure. Okay. Now, I am more concerned about AI generated video and AI generated imagery than I am on the text side. Because for us, the text is so wonderful for drafting emails and generating copy that we can use for different things. But when you start doing AI generated videos and imagery, that's when we get into deep fakes and we get into where it looks like that person is really talking or saying what you want them to say, and it's not really that person. Okay. So I'm not as worried on the ChatGPT and text-based side as I am with some of the concerns that we've got going into video and imagery on AI-based systems. Okay. So with all that said, there are still such great opportunities. There's always going to be bad apples, right? I mean, any tool, anything that is put out there in the world, bad apples, bad people will take it and use it for bad. They're going to misuse that. But so much good can come from this. In fact, when I started working, I believe my first internship at an office was around the year 2001. Okay. And I remember I had an office mate who told me that he had come from another company that in 2001 still didn't give their employees access to the internet because they would do bad things with it. They would just look up things they are not supposed to look at work, if you know what I mean. Okay. And so the companies, even back then in the 90s and even early 2000s, they were saying, we are not going to give access to the internet to all of our employees. And think about where we would be today if all the companies and the legislature had said, we are not giving people access to this global internet tool. And instead, we've seen a ton of good. not all good, but we've seen a ton of good come from the internet access that we have today. So I think of ChatGPT as kind of that next step as well, that it can do tremendous good. And certainly there will be bad things that happen, but hopefully we're going to see legislation put some boundaries around that. In fact, the CEO of OpenAI just this week, his name is Sam Altman, he said to lawmakers on Tuesday here in the States that he welcomes legislation in this space because they would like to have some boundaries and to limit potential misuse as well. So they're not fighting that. I mean, they may fight certain nuances of it, but they're not fighting it. And we are looking to have some guidance and boundaries moving forward. Another opportunity is Microsoft is already planning to build ChatGPT into your Microsoft applications. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, all of those systems are expected to soon have a chatbot called Copilot, and that will help you draft and fix and tweak things much more quickly moving forward, which will be pretty cool if we can get that implemented. All right, so there are one other concern that I'm still seeing too, or a question that everyone has is, who owns this stuff? If I ask it to draft something for me, do I own it? Do they own it? Have I been stealing people's stuff? Where's this information coming from? And to be perfectly honest, here again, May 2023, the jury is still out. We are still trying to figure out exactly who owns what. Right now, people are kind of saying nobody owns it. If you use ChatGPT to craft something, you shouldn't really say that was created by you and you alone. So we are actually using this language because we have started using it to help us craft blogs and articles and templates of ideas that we have, and we work in collaboration with GPT. So we've been putting at the bottom of the article or the blog, we say, written by Magnet Culture in collaboration with ChatGPT. So whatever you create, if you're going to pull it around to the whole company or post it out anywhere, you may want to use similar kind of language just for transparency to make sure that folks know that was in collaboration with this type of tool. We may not need that down the road. They may decide we don't have to say that, but for right now, I just want to make sure that all my clients know that we are using this tool and it's helping us take our own thoughts up to the next level and really make it even better. Okay. So it's really just like you went out and scanned the internet for all of the resources and then created your own summary. That's kind of what it's going to give back to you. All right. And my guess is for internal corporate use, let's say you're writing a job description for someone. There's a million job descriptions out there. So I would not ever call that stealing from other people if you're just going to put together a job description from ChatGPT. So I think for corporate internal use, there's not as much concern about the content ownership. The big concern right now is around, people writing papers for academia. And is that original? And is it your material? Of course not. But then also over in the thought leadership and content development space, like I'm in, being a speaker and author and trainer, where we build our own things, we certainly do not want to steal anyone else's material and steal other ideas. So we're still trying to feel out kind of what does that look like. But from an HR standpoint, for most of you, you're going to be using it internal for corporate drafting and brainstorming of documents and ideas. And I don't believe right now that you've got too much to worry about on the content ownership side. Okay. So uses, how in the heck do we use this thing? Well, I think there's kind of three main buckets of usage. One is research. It can research and consolidate a lot of information very, very quickly for you. Okay. I'm going to give examples of these in just a few minutes, but research is one big piece where it can save you time. The biggest time saver that I'm finding so far is in drafting documents, in drafting templates, drafting emails that I need to write, drafting potentially policies. Of course, you'll want to get legal review on that, but it can draft sample policies and job descriptions and those types of things. It can also write blogs and articles. if you want to create some internal communication to go out. It can make agendas and outlines and scripts for different things. And of course, in the IT world, it can give you code. It can actually draft code to do certain things if you ask it for those prompts. So research is one big one. Drafting your first draft of things is a big time saver. And then the third kind of bucket is in that brainstorming area. Give me a list of, help me think about this. And you can put those prompts in, and it's going to help you brainstorm and come up with bigger, newer, bolder ideas in many cases. So it's almost like having a group of people there to brainstorm with. Okay. So, all righty. Let's get to some fun here. I'm going to share my screen, go back over here. Give me a moment. There we go. All right. So I'd like to show you a couple of the things that I have searched for. Remember, all you have to do is put your prompt down here in the send a message box, and then you hit this little arrow or enter, and it is going to quickly, my friends, within a minute or two, it's going to generate what it is that you are looking for. So what I wanted to share with you is one of my clients is a senior care group. Okay. And they asked me, before I click on this and you start reading the screen, they asked me, because in my book, Staying Power, I talk about building levels to advance people within their job. And in some jobs, whether you have like a technician or a bank teller or a CNA, a certified nurse aide in the healthcare space, we just kind of think, oh, well, a CNA is a CNA is a CNA, right? Well, no, we teach that there are levels of competency. When a person has been a CNA for a longer amount of time, they know more about the job. They have more technical competencies, more soft skill competencies. And so we can then advance them and pay them more and even promote them with a title change in order to keep them longer, right? That's a retention strategy that we teach. So one client recently said to me, well, what would different levels of CNAs look like? How do we identify that? So I put into the system here, I'm going to pop this up for you, go back up to the top. So I put in the prompt, explain the difference between CNA level 1, CNA level 2, and CNA level 3 jobs in a senior care organization. You want to be as specific as possible, okay? And then I said, what competencies are required at each level? Because I wanted to make sure it included those competencies in its response. So you can see here, it said a CNA plays a vital role in a senior care organization, providing basic care to patients. Of course, what's funny is those of us who work in senior care, we don't call them patients, we call them residents. So that's something that would have to be tweaked, and I have to catch that and make sure to make that change, right? If I'm going to use this as a first draft. Assisting with daily activities, ensuring patients, again, safety and comfort. Okay. So then it breaks down here. The CNA level 1 is more entry level, requiring the state approved completion training program. And it gives a little overview, and then it's going to give you competencies. Now, these competencies are not fleshed out. They're not super detailed, but you can either ask ChatGPT to flesh them out more and to dive deeper, or you can at least use this first draft that it has given you as your outline. And then you as an organizational leader can start fleshing it out and putting your specifics underneath each one of those kind of general headlines. All right. So it says here, basic patient care skills such as bathing, grooming, dressing, feeding. You could ask it to elaborate on that, or you can fill in those pieces yourself. Assisting with mobility, transferring, repositioning, effective communication and interpersonal skills, monitoring and recording vital signs, and basic knowledge of infection control and safety procedures. Okay, so that's that level 1, basic things. Before we can put a CNA out on the floor, we've got to have those basic competencies covered in their training and prep. So then level 2 says they're more advanced and more experienced than the level 1. And then it gets into some details. Again, you have to double check. Does this work with your state standards, your company requirements and regulations and guidance and things like that? Because, for example, this says advanced patient care, such as catheter care, wound care, et cetera, and then medication administration. Some states can allow CNAs to become qualified med techs or other titles where they can administer medication, and other states don't allow that. So that's where you got to be careful, right? So you can see here, I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see how this is so helpful as that first draft and putting it together, just instead of starting with a blank page. Who wants to start with a blank page anymore? We don't have to do that, okay? And then after it gave me these overviews with the competencies, I asked another prompt, which you can see here from the yellow box, is please create a sample job description for each of these 3 CNA levels above. All right. Then it came back and said, we are seeking a compassionate, dedicated, and reliable CNA to join our team. Right. So it comes back in that job description type language. It gave the list of responsibilities. I didn't even ask for responsibilities and requirements, but it came back in that job description format. So it's got the list of responsibilities and requirements, again, for level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then I'm gonna try this, you guys. I'm going out on a limb here. I'm gonna say, create a social media post to recruit a CNA level 2 for my senior care organization in Oregon. All right. So let me just see what it says. I don't know what it's going to say, you guys. All right. So here we go. I put social media post. So hopefully it's going to be pretty short. I could have clarified and said, give me a 30-word or 50-word social media post. And I did not clarify which social media platform. So it might be thinking LinkedIn. It might be thinking Facebook or Instagram, that type of thing. Okay. It's still thinking. You can see it kind of pauses and then it gives this. So I need to go look at it now and read it. We've got join our team. I love that it used emojis, right? It knows social, likes emojis. Okay. So are you a compassionate, experienced CNA looking for your next opportunity? Look no further. All right. And it even mentioned the state of Oregon. We're now hiring a CNA level 2. It gives some information. We value our employees and offer a supportive work environment. So it's filling in some of the gaps, right? It doesn't know anything about my company, but it knows what these kind of posts look like. So if you have your active CNA certification in Oregon and at least 1 year of experience, because it assumes that a level 2 has at least 1 year of experience, then we want to hear from you, right? They even mentioned passion, and it put hashtags, for heaven's sake, in there. CNA jobs, Oregon healthcare jobs, senior care jobs, join our team. It even created those hashtags that it found on these types of things. Okay. So, and it put, this is kind of nice. At the end, it said, note, always review and adhere to your organization's policies and guidelines for social media recruitment postings. So it even gave its own disclaimer of, hey, don't use this as your final version. Make sure you have approved it within your company. So I wanted to show you that just so you can see how deep you can go, right? I asked for the overview of the positions. I asked for the job descriptions. Then I asked for the social media posts specific to one of those job descriptions. And you can go on and on and on. You could ask for interview questions for that specific job and those specific competencies. It can save you tons and tons and tons of time. Okay. So, all right, let me bring you back here because I want to talk about different uses that we're seeing as well. And in fact, it's kind of funny. All right, let me share this slide with you. If you think about it, using ChatGPT just blew up your team, right? From, let's say you got 3 people on your HR team. Now you've got 10 people on your HR team just at your fingertips because you have just hired all of the following people by using ChatGPT. Okay, so let's talk about all the different uses here. So an assistant, it can find quick info for you, quick questions. Hey, can you look this up? Hey, can you find out this? Hey, can you gather that for me? Totally great as an assistant in many ways. It is a ghostwriter. All right. Now, some people are saying, well, Cara, you didn't write that whole book or you didn't write that whole article. No, we all use ghostwriters. Okay. Now I love to write and I do write most of my stuff, but I'll tell you, there's a million ghostwriters and copywriters out there that you can hire to help either write for you, they interview you and they write it for you, or they can at least polish it and make it funnier or better or whatever it is you're looking for. And so it can serve as a ghostwriter for you when you don't have time to write and draft a lot of things. Okay. So just know that happens all the time out in the world, and it's okay to use this as a ghostwriter. It can be your creative person on your team that generates new ideas, brainstorms with you. Certainly use it as a researcher where you can dive deeper into what you're looking for and get some deeper information on that. It can summarize data. So if you want to put in employee information, like your employee survey information that came back, you can put in some of those comments and say, find the themes here, or what action should we take based on these suggestions from our staff. If you input information, you can ask it to summarize, analyze, consolidate that information as well, which is really cool. Okay. It can be an instructional designer. Again, junior level. This is not like master level expert people, but if you have, let's say you teach something in your onboarding and you want to make it, instead of a 20-minute overview, you want to make that a 2-hour workshop about your culture or about some of the requirements you have at your organization. If you want to take it from being a small presentation to more of a workshop, that would typically take an instructional designer to say, what are our learning objectives and what are the activities and discussion questions that we need to make that a workshop? And instead, you can simply put in your presentation outline or overview and say, turn this presentation overview into a 2-hour workshop, and give me the outline and the agenda and the activities and the discussion questions. You can just keep diving deeper and deeper and have that assistant instructional designer right at your fingertips, okay? It can also be an IT help desk. It can troubleshoot tech items and help you figure out whether it's code, if it is really, really technical, or just basic troubleshooting issues with your computers. It can help with that. And also it can be a great event planner. Okay. It can put together the itineraries and ideas. I have an example of that I'm going to share with you in just a second as well. And so just remember, I say junior level really loud for a reason. It is not going to give you the polished final version ready to hand over to your boss or your employees. It is simply going to be a first draft of all of these things that it can give you. And then you are going to need to vet that information, make sure it's accurate, tweak it, polish it before it goes out to anyone else. Okay. But it's really cool how it can actually do so much of this stuff for us now. So here's a very specific example. I speak at conferences and corporate annual meetings all the time, right? And I think it's interesting because when I go into a corporate annual meeting, the people who put together the annual meeting, that is not their day job. They are either a director of a department or maybe an HR leader, and they are asked, can you put this annual meeting together? As if it's no big deal, but we all know the logistics behind that and all the prep and all the planning. So here's just a quick breakdown of, if anybody asks you to plan the annual meeting, here's how it can save you time. Okay. It can draft the invitation emails and event communication and reminders. If you give it the information of where people have to be when, and then say, draft 3 email invitations and reminders for the people coming, right? It can do that. It can script your intros because you're going to have to get on the platform and say, welcome to the annual meeting. And by the way, here's our next speaker, Cara Silletto, or whomever it is. And then you might have to do a transition script of, now we're going to have a break or lunch. And it can script all of those intros for you super quickly. You can ask it for icebreaker ideas or team building activity questions and ideas. That can save you tons of time. If you're going to have a theme for your event, I recently spoke at a corporate meeting where it was an 80s theme. So you could ask it for a list of great 80s songs, the most popular 80s songs that we want to play during the breaks. Or maybe even you want to give out themed gifts to people. You could say, give me a list of gift ideas within a certain price point, right? $10, $50, $100. Give me gift ideas that align with a 1980s theme for a corporate event. And it will give you all kinds of great ideas like Rubik's Cubes and all the fun things. Okay. It can also give you city-specific itineraries if you want to do a tour around town, in the evenings, or go bar hopping, or whatever you want to do. You can ask it for an itinerary in that town, and it'll help you create that. And then at the end of your retreat, the end of your annual meeting, you can create a list of action planning questions that it will help you facilitate. What are my people going to do next with all the information they learned at this great annual meeting? Okay, so those are just a few ideas for that one responsibility of, hey, can you put together our annual meeting? And you can save tons of time using ChatGPT to help you with those tools. Okay, so let's go specific for a minute over to recruiting and retention. Now, I've already mentioned several things that you can use it for, but I made a huge kind of smorgasbord list that I'm going to run through that I think might blow your mind if you haven't been using this yet. And the ideas that I'm sharing today, you all, are barely scratching the surface. There is so much more comprehensive use that is available out there of people that are way more technically capable than me, and they are running with it. But just as a basic beginner user, I think you could use almost all of these ideas specific to recruiting and retention. Okay. So under recruiting, for example, you can create job descriptions, you can draft offer letters and emails to the candidates of next steps for interviews, or we're going in a different direction email, those types of things. You can create those social media posts about the job openings, or even some posts about your company culture if you want to beef up your employer brand out on the streets. You may have heard of, I think it's called Boolean, is how you say it, the Boolean searches, which is an internet search that uses and, or, not, those kind of things. I've talked to several recruiters, and they said that the Boolean searches, the search codes that they are getting out of ChatGPT, are better than if you use LinkedIn as your search tool for recruiting, for example. LinkedIn has its own filters for recruiting, but they said the Boolean searches they're getting out of ChatGPT are far more effective than the standard default kind of search filters that LinkedIn has, even for that recruiter hire package that people pay for. So again, more technical than what I'm using it for, but I'm hearing from a lot of recruiters that they're starting to use that tool more. You can customize your interview questions based on some of maybe the red flags or concerns that you have with folks. All right. And then, yes, and Boolean, sorry, Boolean. I think I'm saying that right. But Boolean searches is what you want to look for if you're going to use that for the recruiting code. All right. So then once you get to onboarding, you can create draft onboarding checklists, which we teach. We tell everybody we've got to have onboarding checklists in place now for company checklist, departmental checklist, and role-specific checklists, because we have so much turnover that's unavoidable. This will smooth out that onboarding process if you have checklists in place. So you can start creating some of those onboarding checklists much faster with this tool. You can also ask for games and ideas to make your onboarding more fun, right? How can you make it not so boring if they have to do boring paperwork and boring online learning and other things like that, right? Okay, so once they're recruited, excuse me, once they're recruited and onboarding, then we switch over to retention. So some ideas on retention is drafting up, company-wide emails and updates, because everybody says, all the employees say they want better communication and more frequent communication, but sometimes we just don't have time to tell them everything we're thinking. And this can help us draft those company emails much faster. We can also create those competency lists, as I said, for advancement opportunities. That's what I showed you earlier with the CNA levels as an example, okay? You can create items for your employee handbook potentially, and even draft some policies. Again, you want to get legal involved, make sure that you get approval on all of those. But instead of starting from that blank page, it's a great way to give a starting draft to go from, okay? You can brainstorm appreciation gifts for your employees at a certain price point. Remember, the more specific you are, the better. You can create some games for internal team building or some of that healthy staff competition, like pumpkin carving contests and fun things like that, if you need to bring a little bit more fun back in the workplace. You can build personalized career paths for folks. You can put incentivized kind of perks along people's career path. We call that the carrots, right? You're going to chop up the big carrots and put little baby carrots along that first year of someone's career with you. So that can give you ideas on incentives and perks and the cadence for all of those carrots. You can look up things like stay interview questions, exit interview questions, employee check-in questions. How can I get to know my people better? And look up specific questions around that. Analyzing and summarizing the employee survey data. If you put in certain chunks of data, it can analyze that, give you tips and tricks. And then also maybe create a manager checklist for recognition so they can recognize their people more often, show more appreciation, create a calendar for that. I know a lot of people are starting to use ChatGPT to figure out these apps are figuring out how do we connect it to our calendars and reminder systems so it can tell us what to do when. There's a lot of that out there happening as well. Okay. So, oh my goodness, so many things, and I'm not even quite done yet. So many things. Hopefully you got some ideas just from that whole list that I spouted out. But guess what? You can also ask ChatGPT, how can I use ChatGPT to save time on my employee retention initiatives? And it will spit out a whole other list of even more ideas that you can use as well. Okay. So here is one of the key factors to using ChatGPT successfully. Okay. You ready for this? You have to become a prompt engineer. All right. What I mean by that is you have to get really good, and you'll learn over time as you use it. You have to get really good at asking the perfect question, really framing it as detailed as you can, and in the right context, the right timing, everything that you want. So for example, one of the questions I asked was, give me a monthly plan, right? I said a monthly plan, and then it gave me back week 1, do this, week 2, do this, week 3, do this. And I meant monthly, like January, February, March. But because I said monthly and I didn't clarify, it gave me a 1-month plan week by week. So I went back and I asked it, give me a monthly plan for an entire year. And then it switched it to January, February, March. Okay. So you have to get really good at figuring out how to engineer or how to craft your prompts that you're putting in. And that's when you're going to get really good information out of there, is if you can prompt appropriately. Okay. Also, you can ask it if it's not detailed enough. Now, remember, 4.0 is more comprehensive and detailed than the 3.5 version right now. But in either version, if you want more details, you can ask it to dive deeper, or can you flesh that out more for me? Can you, I heard somebody say to ask it anything else. If you're just looking for general information or ideas, you can just put anything else, and then it will give you another round of answers. You can also ask it the same prompt 2 or 3 or 4 times, and it is going to generate new versions of that. It will never give the same answer twice if it is drafting and crafting a version of something. Okay. So instead of diving deeper, you might just do at the bottom, there's a regenerate response button, and you can hit that and it will try again. And maybe that will give you the language that you were looking for. Or you can then combine the 2 or 3 versions that you got into the one final version that you want to use. Okay. So that prompt engineering is really the key to success on that. So, all right, before I wrap up with my final thoughts here today, I just wanted to, as Maggie said, remind everybody that if you are trying to save time, we also have been doing that for years as retention experts. And so if you are not already familiar with our Vault, okay, it's at magnetvault.com, or you can use this QR code that's up on the screen here. But if you are not familiar with Magnet Vault and you have not been in there for a while, we recently revamped it, made it much more effective to use, easier to find things, great thumbnails and everything. So this is a place where Magnet Culture, we create templates and tools and lists and questions that you can use. Like we already have a 2-minute team building list of questions. We have an employee check-in journal for managers to use. There's all kinds of tools in there. So you may want to bookmark magnetvault.com as well. And once you put your email in, it's going to give you access to all of these tools and templates and all the things. Okay. So make sure to bookmark it because we are constantly adding new tools and templates as our clients ask us for those retention resources to save them time. So before you even go to ChatGPT, you may want to check the vault and see if Magnet already has the tool or the template or a video or ebook on that you can use and share with your team. Okay. So make sure to share this resource, this Magnet Vault, with your entire HR team and with your senior leaders or department heads who are also hiring managers and they're having to figure out some retention initiatives on their own as well. Okay. So, okay, here we go. Ready? Here's my closing thoughts on this sucker. All right. So remember, ChatGPT is only looking historically for you. It is not forward thinking. So thank goodness I still have a job because we are forward thinking and we are always looking at what's happening now and where are we headed. But ChatGPT is great for gathering that historical information and summaries of other things that are already out there. Okay. So just keep in mind, it's not going to look ahead and it may not be super duper accurate as of today. Remember, it's only pulling up through September of 2021 as of right now. So be careful of that and that level of accuracy. It may be wrong. It may be wrong. And that's okay. You need to confirm the data just like you would if you had another assistant pulling this information, but confirm it. And if your gut tells you something's not right, it might not be right. Okay. And just definitely check that again. Also, AI is here to stay. Y'all, this is not a phase. This is not a fad. AI is coming. It is here and it is only going to get bigger and more complex. I've already seen a lot of companies, as I mentioned earlier, using an AI a framework or it's the underlying tool to their app or their software, and they are doing far more comprehensive things than what I've talked about today. Okay. In fact, I'm seeing a lot in the recruiting space around screening applications and resumes and even handling interviews, potentially, first rounds of interviews and things like that. So those tools are not going to be free and that's okay. But we are going to see more and more technology stacking on top of this human-like generative AI tool that is now at our fingertips. Okay. So don't be intimidated. This is coming. This is only going to take over more and more of the kind of basic level responsibilities within our organizations. It's going to make us more effective and faster in our, more efficient in our roles, which is really important because we are all so busy and we don't have enough hands on our teams. And so please take the time to at least learn the basics here. Jump onto ChatGPT if you have not already. Go explore it. Get comfortable with this very basic tool so that you're not intimidated when those amazing software engineers come in and say, now we can do this with it and help your team even better, right? Even more. So I don't want you to take that thought. I remember when I was about 35, I was like, oh, new music? No, thank you. I've got enough music in my life. I know all the songs from all the past decades and genres, and now new music, I don't need to learn that, right? And so I think a lot of people, I don't know, somewhere between 35 and 40, a lot of people say, I'm done learning new music. And we kind of stick with what we know. And we can't do that in business with technology, all right? In fact, I was just talking with a CFO who came up to me after a conference that I spoke at, and he said, our CEO is stuck. Our CEO will not move forward and is holding all of us back. Don't let that be you, okay? Because his CEO is just a few years from retirement and has nothing to do with his age. It has to do with his mindset. He said the guy's just done. He's just coasting and he doesn't want to have to learn new things. So if you ever get into that phase where you say, I don't want to learn this new stuff, then get out of the way of the people who want to move the organization forward and want to learn and embrace the technology that we're going to need to stay competitive, friends. All right. So make sure that you don't dig your heels in and fight against all of this technology, even if it's not ChatGPT that you want to use. Make sure you're staying up to date and not holding your team back, especially in that space of recruiting and retention and culture. So thank you all so much for your time today. This recording will be on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/magnetculture. Share it with your friends, share it with your team, and good luck on your ChatGPT and generative AI journey moving forward. Thanks so much. Have a great day.